For this video, we're going to catapult ourselves into the far-flung year of 1997. The N64 was still new, and developers were scrambling to create games in the 3D space. One of the earliest titles on the console was Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. With Nightdive Studio's recent resurrection of the series through remasters, now is a better time than ever to revisit this series where it started. I invite you to join me in rediscovering this classic, beautifully recreated for a modern audience.
I am Turok!
Turok is one of the earliest titles released on the N64. Developed by Iguana Entertainment and coming to the console only 5 months after its release. It was so well received by gamers that it spawned a slew of sequels, and is still remembered fondly to this day. The story elements in Turok are not really in the game at all, besides a small amount of environmental storytelling. Instead, the story comes from the comic books based on Turok. I actually didn't even realize this until I was preparing the video, but the Turok comics date back as far as the 50s. A small synopsis is given in the included game manual. Our game takes place in the Lost Land, a world where time has no meaning. In this land is our villain, the Campaigner, an evil overlord seeking to shred the fabric of time and rule the universe using an ancient artifact known as the Chronoscepter. This powerful item has been broken into 8 pieces and spread throughout the Lost Land to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. You are Talset, a Saquin warrior from the late 1800s. The latest to inherit the mantle of Turok, you are flung through time to the Lost Land to gather the pieces of the Chronoscepter and stop the Campaigner before he can complete his plans. And that's really it for the story to start our game. It's not much to go on, but with dinosaurs awaiting your bow, what else is there that needs to be said? Gameplay for Turok is what you would expect. A fast-paced shooter combining quick movement with satisfying gunplay. Unlike a lot of shooters from this era, there was a big focus on platforming in Turok. And unlike a lot of older games, it actually felt pretty good and didn't get in the way of the game. You could jump, swim, climb, and run, all while simultaneously fighting a turret-mounted Triceratops. Back in 1997, this game was wild. The first level starts strong. Before we even encounter our first enemy, we can see a pistol suspended on a ledge above us. A quick dip in the nearby river brings us up to the pistol, and we are officially strapped. This is a great way the game naturally introduces how secrets are a critical part of the Turok experience, and keeping your head on a swivel will yield great rewards. The pistol is a solid weapon, but one we won't use much outside this first level, as far more powerful weapons are on the way. Before long, we encounter the first of the Campaigner's men, and our first dinosaur, a Velociraptor. We flex on the big salamander by killing it with our bow. Moving onward, the game does a great job introducing its platforming mechanics, hiding little treasures all over the map, within our grasp if we're willing to do a bit of jumping. There is even a shotgun suspended in the air here if we're willing to jump for it. Again, this is a solid weapon that will be replaced with a stronger version before too long. In a stone maze, a keen eye nets us the first piece of the Chronoscepter. Yet another game where I require 8 pieces of a staff. This has given me flashbacks to the Elder Scrolls arena. The remainder of this level is not much of a challenge, but just serves as an introduction to the gameplay loop. The level ends with a mini-boss of a sort that we make short work of. Then we find ourselves in the main hub of the game. This area is a circle of portals where we need to find keys, with each portal being a new level. We gathered a few keys on the way here, so we head to level 2 right away, the jungle. This level is exactly what you would expect, a jungle. Before long we get our hands on the assault rifle. This is the first weapon we find that will be effective throughout the remainder of the game. It is good up close and at a range, and it shares an ammo pool with the pistol, so bullets are always in abundance. This is a great time to mention how impressive it is that Turok can use these weapons so effectively. This guy is from the 1800s, and he's coming in here running and gunning like the Doomslayer. These poor soldiers didn't really stand a chance. Moving on through the level, we come across our first portal area. Throughout the game, you'll find blue portals that phase in and out of existence. Entering these portals will lead to opportunities for more loot and ammo, usually requiring some form of platforming to claim them. Nice little boosts to find when it's needed, however, this is where I take my first death. greedily jumping for health that I really don't need. I miss my footing and plummet down into an instant death pit, costing me one of my lives. Another good time to mention the live system on offer here. You have lives in Turok. Dying once will bump you back to the latest checkpoint with no penalty to progress. Losing all of your lives means you're reloading your save. As the game utilizes save points, this could actually be a fairly significant loss of progress. However, deaths really aren't too common in the game, and lives are fairly common. It never becomes an issue in my playthrough. I think the lowest I ever get is maybe 2 lives. We move on, and once again, keeping our eyes open, we're able to claim another piece of the Chronoscepter from a high platform. Not long after, we find another blue portal that happens to lead to another room just like the one we died at earlier. Time for vengeance on this platform. We're gonna do it this time. Nope, missed the jump again, and take our second death. Maybe I should just leave the health alone. Toward the end of the stage, we find a hidden chamber in an Aztec temple that nets us the auto shotgun. It's like a normal shotgun, except it's automatic. If you don't understand why that's awesome, maybe we should see other people. Using the keys we net from the prior level, we're on to the ancient city. As the name suggests, this map moves out of the green spaces of the jungle and into more stone and buildings. Our campaigner grunts are replaced with a more savage-looking version. Gameplay-wise, they're really the same enemies. This level has a great design. Lots of opportunities to be rewarded for platforming in the main area. Going rooftop to rooftop always rewards some more ammo or lives. The map doubles back on itself a couple of times, unlocking more areas and different paths each time. At one point in this map, there are branch traps. They literally made me duck down in my computer chair. If that's not immersion, I don't know what is. This level concludes with our toughest platforming section yet. Bouncing between stone pillars on our way to a main structure, we find the third piece of the Chronoscepter suspended on a high ledge, hidden almost out of view. Jumping back down, we take another death, falling into the bottomless pit. You may have noticed by now, most of my deaths are from falling. Well, that is about to change. Stepping through the end portal, we're intercepted by our first boss, and oddly enough, the most difficult. This boss is a Humvee charging at us. Despite our quick movement, it is quicker and actually knocks a life off of us. No worries, we have more. Defeating the first rampaging SUV, another appears. We take it down and finally confront the main enemy on offer. Weirdly difficult just due to his speed and tankiness. We do take him down, but it costs us a few lives and doesn't really feel like a good win. We're getting low on lives now and we'll have to buckle down so we don't run out. He does drop the pulse rifle, an energy version of our assault rifle. This is a welcome addition to our arsenal. The next stop on our journey is the ruins. This level is the first that is really non-linear in its design, allowing for you to take multiple paths at the start. We find the minigun not too far into the level. It's a minigun, capable of holding 500 bullets, and one of the more deadly weapons in the game. It's powerful but melts through your ammunition. We also find the grenade launcher here. In an inventive secret that I find by accident, there are invisible floating platforms in one of the main areas. Carefully following them leads us to our prize. The grenade launcher is also a staple from here on out. Aside from this, there isn't much to say about the remainder of this map. Thematically, it's a mix of the stone aesthetic from the ancient city and the outdoor greenery from the jungle map. We get what we need and move on. The next map is entitled The Catacombs, and I would argue that the title is a bit misleading. These aren't catacombs, but a full-on temple, forsaking the outdoor spaces of the previous maps and moving into an indoor setting. This level mixes up the gameplay nicely, removing the big spaces and instead forcing us to adapt to tight, cramped corridors. It doesn't take long to adapt and start destroying the enemy. In a flooded portion of the temple, we find the shockwave weapon, or the particle accelerator as the manual calls it. This is a chargeable energy weapon, which for me sees almost no use. I found the energy cost for the damage ratio was not worthwhile. I prefer the pulse rifle. More bang for your buck, but your mileage may vary. There is a cool set piece here as we near the end of the map. We make our way outside for a brief stint and find an Aztec aquifer. Climbing the side of the central tower, we claim a key piece and drain the aquifer. We can then follow the drainage tunnel to find the water has filled a death pit that we passed earlier in the map. The now flooded pit can be used to access the end of the map. I thought this was a really neat way to have the map circle back on itself, and stood out to me as impressive level design. Anyhow, entering the final portal, we're in a large stone room. Final key presented for us below a large statue. Approaching to grab the key, it descends below the floor and the statue explodes, exposing it to be a large insect. This battle is nothing special really, actually significantly easier than the last boss. However, it really makes me wonder what happened here. Why is there an insect encased in stone at the bottom of this temple? Is it sentient? Did it choose to encase itself and was waiting for an unwitting victim? Why not do this in a more populous location if that's the case? Or did the campaigner specifically trap this insect to set a trap for us? Maybe the insect monster is just as much a victim as we are. Well, Turok kills first and asks questions never, so I guess we will do the same. On to the next level. This next map is another good time. We start off on a cliff and work our way steadily downward for the first part of the map. There are ample opportunities here to snipe enemies with grenade fire, which is super enjoyable for me. The level also scraps its non-linear approach that was present in the last few maps, and moves instead to a full-on linear map. As much as I generally enjoy a game allowing me to choose where I go, I have to admit I prefer the linear levels in this game. They just seem to mesh better with keeping the action tempo high. Reaching the end of the cliffs, we start to encounter the first aliens in the game. That's right, aliens. For those not versed in Turok lore, aliens are a big part of the dino hunting world. Just roll with it. Anyhow, from the aliens we find another new weapon, literally called the alien weapon. Super creative there, Iguana Entertainment. What's next? The dinosaur weapon? The human weapon? The steel weapon? Poorly named weapon in hand, we finally reach the treetop village. I was starting to think that this level was lying in its name. This area is fun, though you literally can't see the bottoms of the trees. What kind of monstrous 500-foot trees are these? And why did the locals build their village so high up? What is down there in the fog they're trying to stay away from? We find one more weapon towards the end of the stage, the missile launcher. Actually, it's not a missile launcher. It's entitled the far more accurate Quad Rocket Launcher. It does as you would expect, and fires 4 rockets. As badass as that sounds, I actually found I preferred the grenade launcher. The rockets were sadly slow moving and difficult to aim. I often took splash damage when using them. Perhaps I'm just a garbage shot. We snag another piece of the Chronoscepter here, and move on to the next stage. The penultimate level of this adventure is entitled simply, The Lost Land. I sort of thought the whole place was the Lost Land, but I guess this is the Lost Land of the Lost Land. Kind of like there's a New York, New York. This level has a distinct Grand Canyon aesthetic. Some new enemies appear here, including a giant Venus flytrap that does a good job jump scaring me. We also encounter our very first mounted Triceratops. These enemies are spongy as hell, but if you're going to label yourself a dinosaur hunter, they are all but required in your game. We take it out with our new rocket launcher, Turok, delivering genocide to dinosaurs since 1954. Some fancy footwork on floating rocks nets us the fusion cannon. This is our BFG weapon. It is super overpowered, but the 2 ammo cap and the rarity of refills means we won't see it used much. Here it is destroying a Triceratops. Get dunked on, 3-horn. The rest of this level is fairly unremarkable. We come across some more platforming, a unique worm enemy mini-boss encounter. Oh, and we finish the level by breaching into a giant alien complex. This game transitions from fighting Stone Age tribal enemies to aliens and cyborgs surprisingly fast. Also, the Velociraptors have guns now. What? The last map is aptly named the Final Confrontation. I sort of thought this would just be the final boss stage, but it is actually probably one of the longer levels in the game. You mostly just rampage through an alien spacecraft. Not much to say here. Big shout out to the garbage crabs at the bottom levels of the ship. Turok is adding new enemies right up until the end. Finally, we reach this hallway. Yeah, that's probably not good. Also, look at the ratio of the size of those skulls in comparison to the dudes hanging up. Those are definitely not human skulls. Also, who are these dead guys? This has been a one-man war. Are these my allies? Or is this how the campaigner inspires his troops? Taking the portal, we find, well, a cyber T-Rex. I mean, what else do I say? It's a T-Rex with cybernetic enhancements. He even has some sort of red laser vision. That's just badass. We kill him, and are treated to Turok asserting his dominance. That's right, he just killed a T-Rex without a shirt on. Doomslayer has nothing on this warrior. On from here, we find the final piece of the Chronoscepter and assemble it into a weapon of devastation. We follow a trail of weapons into the next arena and begin our final combat against the campaigner. We start the fight with a salvo of explosions from the Chronoscepter. We spent this long building it, may as well make use of it. There really isn't much to say here. The campaigner is nothing compared to a Cyber T-Rex, so this fight just feels like filler. The scepter also drains probably like 70% of his health, trivializing the fight. Once his health bar empties, I actually thought there might be a phase 2. It seems like he might get back up, but he crumbles like the loser he is. The whole complex then begins to self-destruct, and we're treated to a cutscene of Turok fleeing the fiery chaos. In terms of what's in the game, that's where things end. Story-wise, according to the comics, after the campaigner's defeat, Turok decides to throw the Chronoscepter into a volcano to avoid it being misused in the future. Unfortunately, the ensuing devastation awakens the Primogen, the main antagonist of the next game, Turok: Seeds of Evil. Love a game with some good foreshadowing. Before I go into my final thoughts on the game, I thought about adding a segment here to the video where I take a look at some other people's opinions on the game that differ from my own, just to give some perspective at best, or comedy at worst. This first review is from Steam. Maybe the crappiest FPS of all time. Poor kids with the N64 who were too poor to afford a gaming PC had to cope playing this garbage. Lol. Well, you heard it here. Crappiest FPS of all time. Nothing worse has ever been released. Especially not in the age of shovelware DOS games. And definitely not on this very console. Also, the N in N64 is capitalized. Get it right. Also from Steam. Only worth the trip for the nostalgia and the chance to see how FPS/first-person adventure games got their start. Just not that fun, and poor saving support means you really have to dedicate time to play it. Hard pass. Well, I just have to disagree on all counts. I actually never played this game past the first level back in the day. I remember renting it once from Jumbo Video and not really being a fan due to the respawning enemies. So I can say pretty confidently that nostalgia didn't fuel my enjoyment this time. In terms of poor saving support, I mean, I guess, yeah, the game has save points. But honestly, I think the greatest time between any is maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And it stops players from save scumming their way through the game. I think that's a fair trade-off personally. Also, the game is like 5 to 6 hours long, tops. Nothing here screams serious time commitment. There isn't too much more to say about Turok that hasn't been said. It is an excellent console shooter that was good enough to not only stand on its own 2 feet, but also to spawn a slew of sequels. The gameplay was basic, but it was exactly what it needed to be. For a console title, the game boasted an impressive array of enemies, and a whopping 16 weapon arsenal, more than most comparable PC games at the time, or even now realistically. The game was short, and honestly not insanely challenging, but it does what it set out to do. The platforming and movement was solid. The levels, for the most part, were varied. Additionally, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I feel the need to shout out to the sound being top-notch, especially the music. Heavy drum beats really let you get in the mood to hunt some prehistoric creatures. With the full trilogy of these games now remastered by Nightdive Studios, I can absolutely recommend this game. It is a solid experience for only $20 and more accessible than ever before. I will caveat that I still hold that the best game in the series is Turok 2, Seeds of Evil, but this one is definitely worth playing as well to see where the series got its start. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments your favorite N64 or retro shooters, or if you also believe that this is the single worst FPS ever released, so I can be sure to avoid your recommendations in the future. See you in the next video.